Hello, everybody. Come on in. Welcome, welcome. Good morning. Well, I guess depending on where you live. Hello, welcome. Come on in. Who's ready for mashed potatoes? Nice. Kirkle, are you going to be making mashed potatoes or are you just hanging out and watching me cook? Let's go. Yes. Yes. Huh. Yeah, this is only Lep's favorite food, so number one taste tester is actually code for number one eater of mashed potatoes so that nobody else gets any and he eats them all. He is the garbage can for mashed potatoes. You loved this recipe? You've made this recipe? Cool. I'm glad you enjoyed. Did you get yourself a potato ricer for this recipe? Just out of curiosity. What potatoes? They're russets or Idaho, but it's a russet potato. You're looking for starchy potatoes, not waxy potatoes. You love mashed potatoes. Well, then this is the cook along for you. Welcome. Come on in. We're going to get started shortly. I'm going to let people get in here. Hey, Paloma.
Mistakes.
Do I use butter and butter/milk? Yes, I do. I use both. More butter than milk. Actually, there's quite a bit of butter and quite a bit of sour cream in this recipe, and then just a touch of milk to loosen everything up. Yeah. I know a lot of recipes have like heavy cream or like creme fraiche or mascarpone or even cream cheese. I'm not opposed to cream cheese mashed potatoes. I think because it's such a tangy flavor that it actually like does work well. But I tried very hard to stay away from things that were gonna make the potatoes more dense because I like them to be light. I don't like a dense mashed potato. So I stayed away from the ingredients that were gonna like make it kind of heavy. Other than butter, because like you can't say no to butter, right? What is all of this? Go away. Go away. I'm getting an unpinned message and I don't know. There, it's gone. Okay. There we go. Now you need to make potatoes? Good. Do it. Butter. You can say no, but they'd be wrong about butter? Yeah. Hello. You love mashed potatoes. That's great. That's great. This is the cook along for people who love mashed potatoes. We're making mashed potatoes today. Do I have anybody who is actually going to be making mashed potatoes with me today, or are we all just watching? I'm looking down at my computer, by the way. Can you see my computer in the shot, hon? Okay. Good to know. Got a lot of watchers. Okay. You're cozy and watching? Cool. Yeah, I stream without Lep, but on Lep's channel, because, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna just lay this out for everybody who's here during the live. You'll hear me repeat some of this once we actually start recording for the playlist on YouTube. There are like, I guess, the non-live videos. So we have kind of a 2-section thing on my YouTube channel. One being like, hey, this is the actual uncut live, and then here is a kind of like cut down version of the recipe itself for anybody who hopefully finds it not in a not live setting. And so today specifically, I know if I ask this question to you guys, I know the answer, but I feel like I should ask it anyway. The thing about making the thing about making mashed potatoes is that they boil for a really, really long time. And there's nothing to do in the interim. So I did pull some beef stock and some beef fat, tallow, whatever we want to call it. It's not actually to the point of being like pure beef tallow. It's just the fat that I pulled off the top of the pot when I made it. And I've got some flour behind me, and I was thinking about making some gravy so that for anybody who is going to be cooking, this was kind of a concept of we're coming into the holidays, let everybody get a really good mashed potato recipe. I could, in the middle of the recipe, while the mashed potatoes are kind of doing their thing and boiling, or the potatoes are boiling, that I also make a gravy so that I can talk to you guys about making gravy. That would only be in the live video. You'll hear me kind of be like, and then we'll be back when the potatoes are done boiling, and we'll go ahead and move forward with our mashed potatoes. So the live will have gravy information, and the playlist video will not. Do you guys want me to just sit and chat with you while we wait, or would you prefer to have some gravy kind of rundown recipe situation? This is a silly question, but I feel like I need to ask it anyway. We're half recovered. Picky eaters, yeah, I get that. Mashed potatoes is your favorite food? Nice. It's a good favorite food. It's a good choice. Okay, so I'm guessing Ilsa is saying yes to gravy. Might as well make some gravy. Okay. It can be arranged. I have everything here. You always vote for gravy? Right, let me make sure that I need another pot. Let's see. I don't even know what I have down here, to be frank. I can make it in this guy. I could have sworn that I had a smaller guy, but I guess I don't. Nope. Out of curiosity. Oh, I do. I do have a smaller one. Okay, so we'll boil the potatoes on a burner over here, and then I'll make the gravy underneath this guy. Got a camera up here, so I have a top-down view. So you'll get kind of a top-down view of all different parts of this. Cool. Everything's giving you budget about 45% of your gut room to potatoes. That's pretty funny. You always vote for gravy? Nice. Okay. That's pretty funny, 45% of my gut room. I too, I don't know, it's hard. It's hard. I really like fresh dinner rolls. I really like gravy. I really like stuffing. Mashed potatoes are good, but I really just want like stuffing and gravy and bread. Hi. Hello. %20 to the pecan pie. Death Rage, you need to make butter tarts. If you've never had a butter tart, you need to have a butter tart. It's basically a pecan pie, but it's IMO better. Especially if you mess around with the flavors. I made a mocha one that had espresso and chocolate in it once. It's really good. I do have a potato ricer because this is how you should be making your mashed potatoes. Either a mill or a ricer, but this is easier to clean. It's less hectic than a mill. Okay, why don't we go ahead and get ourselves started? It is literally a lifesaver, and it's a lifesaver for for a whole bunch of other stuff. So like anytime you're doing anything with the texture of like a mashed potato ricer is key. Okay. Okay, I guess. So what I'm gonna do for our people who are here and alive, who have maybe never been to a live, hello, I'm Carrie, nice to meet you. Today we're making our mashed potatoes, but we're also kind of in the middle of filming this live, also filming a separate video that's kind of like a cut down that gets put onto YouTube and maybe onto my website. So I am going to do a quick intro for that. So you're gonna hear me do an intro about the recipe and all that, and then we'll start moving into the recipe itself and taking care of that. Okay? Hun, let me know when you're ready for that. You ready? Okay. Yeah, I'm ready. Hello and welcome to the A Little Spoon Kitchen. Today we are making mashed potatoes. I know that our holiday season is coming up, and so I figured that this cook-along should be taking care of that one side dish for you guys, making sure that you have the creamiest, lightest, most wonderful mashed potatoes that you can possibly have. I like to call them home-style mashed potatoes. They are what I would consider mashed potatoes at its simplest and most delicious form. There are a lot of other recipes where you're adding herbs or brown butter or garlic or cream cheese and a bunch of other different ingredients. I prefer to stick to butter, sour cream, and milk and call it a day, and just make sure that I'm taking care of each step and making it as kind of perfect as possible as you go along, so that by the time you get to the end result, everything comes together and just makes like just wonderful, wonderful mashed potatoes. So let's go ahead and get started. Today I have about 2.5 pounds of russet potatoes, which is the equivalent of 1.1 kilograms for our people who are working with the metric system. That's typically between 5 to 7 medium potatoes. These are actually rather large potatoes, and I actually have too much weight here, but it's only because I'm gonna do a little bit of a demonstration with half of one of these for you guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and first we're gonna peel these. And then we are going to add them to a pot of water, which I've got back here. I haven't filled it up with water yet. The way that these cook-alongs work is I have absolutely nothing measured. I have absolutely nothing done, so that if anybody comes into this video, whether it be for a live or it be at a later date and you've just found it on my new YouTube channel, you can, from start to finish, work with me through a recipe, and you're never kind of feeling like, wait, what did she do? Or I missed that step, or that was too quick of a cut, or it was too fast, or something like that. I like to kind of make sure that we're all kind of on the same page. For those of you who are joining me at a later date when this was not alive, because this is currently alive, you might see me kind of looking off to the side. I'm talking to a chat. They are going to ask questions. I'm going to try to answer and just talk in detail about what I'm doing as much as possible, as well as answer their questions. If while you were watching this video or while you were making the mashed potatoes that we were making in this video, and you do have questions and it doesn't sound like I answered it, or for chat or just in general, go ahead and just type in the comments. Send me a question, and then I will see how fast I can get in there and answer your question for you over in YouTube. So, okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and peel these guys. I'm just gonna quickly peel them over my trash right here. Now, I mentioned that I am using russet potatoes. The reason that I'm using russet, they're also called Idaho if you're in the US. The reason that I'm using this style of potato is because they're actually quite starchy. And they've got a high moisture, low starch, or high starch kind of situation going on. And a lot of the times I've seen people use like Yukon Gold potatoes. Those are a lot waxier and they hold up better. They create a denser mashed potato. And there's nothing wrong with that. To me, waxy potatoes are really meant for like a potato salad or something where like you want the potatoes to kind of keep their shape and stay together. And I'm not a huge fan of that in general. That kind of like, they're like, how do I explain it? So like for a russet, when you're using russets for mashed potatoes, because they've got such a high starch factor, they kind of fluff. When you put them through a ricer or a mill, they get a lot of air in them. They stay really light and fluffy, and that's something that a waxy potato will not do. Now, a waxy potato, because it is so dense, if you add enough like other ingredients in, so like we were mentioning milk and butter and all that kind of stuff, they can in fact get creamier than the russets will get, but you also don't have that lightness. Like they get really, really dense. And so you kind of, it's like, which one do you want to have? And this is just my preferred potato. And that's what this recipe was based off of, was using the russets. Almost done. And then something else that you're going to see me do, it depends really on how long you feel like waiting for your potatoes to boil, and also how much potato flavor you want to have. So for cutting down your potatoes, I can leave these completely whole and just boil them in as these big potatoes, just kind of boil them down. Or I can cut them into chunks and boil the chunks. Now that's exactly what I'm going to do today, just because I don't want you guys to sit around here for an hour and 20 minutes waiting for these to boil all the way through, because that's probably about what it would take to boil these all the way through. I'm actually going to cut them probably in thirds today, just to save a little bit of time. But you really, I don't suggest cutting them smaller than maybe about, let's say 2-inch or 5 centimeter cubes. If they get smaller than that, you're going to have a bunch of extra surface area that water is going to get into the cells of the potato, and it's going to make your potatoes watery and obviously taste less like potatoes. So the more intact you can make your potatoes and you can have your potatoes, the less water is going to get actually into the potato by the time they've been boiled. And then also the more potato flavor you have, because less of that potato flavor is leached into the water. So let's do, it's going to be 8 cups of water, which is about 1.9 liters. I am going to measure this. I don't usually measure anything about making potatoes when I make potatoes, but because we're doing a recipe, we're going to stick to the recipe, right? So it's just the how do I say this? the ratio that I prefer of water to salt when I'm salting potatoes or pasta or anything where like the water is kind of giving a little bit of salt into whatever I'm boiling. This is the ratio that I like to have, which is 8 cups or that 1.9 liters. There you go. To 1.5 teaspoons of diamond crystal kosher salt. That is the kosher salt that I like to use. I prefer kosher salt just because the flake is different than like an iodized salt is super, super salty. The crystal of iodized salt is like really, really compressed. So you need very, very little of it in order to get a really salty flavor. Whereas kosher salt, it melts better into whatever you're making, into baked goods, into like sauteing something, into sauces. It melts better and it's got a flake style. So it's not like a compressed crystal. It's like really flaky and light. And I think it offers a better, kind of, I want to say imbue, because like whatever, vocabulary. It imbues the food with a better overarching and like incorporates better into the food than like an iodized salt. So we're going to do 1.5 teaspoons, which is about 3.5, give or take, grams of kosher salt. Now, I will say that it is important to also weigh or like specifically measure out, or just to weigh your salt, I would say. If you're not using specifically diamond crystal kosher salt, it's important to weigh your salt because different salts weigh different things. And so if you go by volume, which is these guys, so if you're going by the measuring spoon, there's a chance that you oversalt. Morton kosher salt, so I mentioned diamond crystal, that's the one that I use. Morton kosher salt is actually 30% heavier than diamond crystal. And so if I did the same amount by volume, I would actually be salting my stuff by over 30% more than what I would with diamond crystal. So it's actually kind of important to measure your salt by weight, but also like to taste is fine. Like just go to taste and like it'll be good. It's really hard to oversalt something when you're just boiling it in water. It's kind of the after part when you're putting everything together at the end and you're kind of salting to taste. Like that's where you really want to pay attention to what you're doing, and either go by weight or go by taste and not necessarily go by volume. Okay, let's dual high. We're gonna get this going. Do I even want dual actually? I think I want just a single burner. Where is the single burner? Yeah, that's good. An important thing when you're cooking anything in general is to make sure that the burner that you're putting your pots and your pans on actually fits the bottom of the pot or the pan. If you have a really large pot on a kind of small burner, you are going to unevenly heat the surface of that pot and then vice versa. And you don't want to do that. It's best to have the pot that belongs on the same size burner that covers that whole base. That's what you're sticking for. So that's what I was kind of doing over there, is making the decision on what size burner I wanted to use on that guy. Okay, so I only need about a half of this guy. We're gonna do this. Okay. Said I was gonna do it in threes. We're gonna do it in threes. So this is basically what's going into that water. It is important. I know I just started the heat on that. It's important to get these guys in to the water before it starts getting hot. If you if you put potatoes into water that's already boiling, so like if you say, start what I did over here, and then the potatoes go in, and you've got them going right into boiling water, the outside is going to cook way faster than the inside, and then it's going to start to kind of slough off in the water, and that's not going to be great for your end result. So what you want to do is you kind of want to bring it up gradually so that it gives the potato time to actually soften as that water heats up, and then it just overall cooks through the potato way better than introducing it to an already boiling pot. So let's see, I'm going to quick read through anything. Tip on the salt you never knew. Well, good. I'm glad that I could help with that a little bit. let's see. Not even, let's see. Yellow for roasted potatoes, yeah, with onions. Yeah, the Yukon Gold's yellow potatoes can get super creamy when you roast them, and they're actually quite nice like that. Let's see. Sorry, guys, I'm just reading through. I had to go back a while for some chat stuff. I do use Kerrygold butter for these. In the recipe, I think I just said European style butter, and it's just because you want to have a really high fat content as opposed to American style butters, which have a higher water content. And so that's why I've got this guy right here. I do also prefer, and this is again, like this is just a you do you kind of a thing. I get unsalted butter because I prefer to add my own salt and not have to contest with like how salty a salted butter is going to make something and then actually have to like cook to taste. I can just have a consistent thing every time because I'm using like an unsalted situation and using the same amount of salt every time. And I'm not kind of like having to tweak and work around a pre-salted butter. There are other, I think it's called like Flirgia, Presidente, Cabot has their own. I think Vital Farms has their own European style butters. There's quite a few of them. Kerrygold is probably my favorite. I think it just is like meltier, for lack of better terminology. A lot of higher fat butters are much softer at room temperature, and I've found that Kerrygold is actually the softest at room temperature of all of the European style butters that I've messed with. Danish Creamery, Danish I think is another brand. And it's just ended up being kind of like my favorite of all of them, but not sponsored. Would love a sponsor. No, not sponsored. Just my preferred brand. I've used other brands too. It's not like the quintessential only thing I will use. It's just my preferred one. Not sponsored. Hashtag not sponsored. Okay, so while that is going, I want to quickly go through a little bit of a conversation about when I was talking about like the size of the pieces of potato that you use. And then I also want to bring up one other thing. You saw how large of the chunks that I've got kind of going into my pot back here. And then I kind of I'm going to see if I can bring that up to temperature so I can show you guys what that is supposed to look like while it's boiling in the pot. Because there is such thing as too high like of a boil, too strong of a boil, I should say. When you're boiling potatoes, what you really want to do is you want to get kind of work up a nice foam over the top, and you want it to kind of look like it's shifting around, kind of like this, right? But it's not actually like boiling, rolling boil. The rolling boil is going to move your potatoes around too much in the water and agitate them. They'll start rubbing up against each other, and as that outside cooks, and you're waiting for the inside to get cooked all the way through, it'll start sloughing off the starch molecules around the outside, and then you get like, it does some weird stuff to the water. It takes off, like you lose a good amount of your potato, and we don't want to do that. We want to keep them as like least agitated as possible while still making sure that they boil all the way through and don't take forever to cook. So those are probably going to take about 40. They're pretty big chunks. They're probably going to take about 45 minutes to go all the way through. If they were slightly smaller, they would take less. But again, the smaller the pieces, the less potato flavor and the more watery that your potatoes are going to get when you are done boiling them. Let's quick talk about that. So let's quick talk about that. So I've got, say, this is about the smallest piece that I would tell you to use. So some of the potatoes that I cut them into thirds, right? So this is kind of that top piece, and you do want to keep the potatoes relatively the same size, right? You want them to cook at the same rate and finish at the same time. And so in theory, sometimes potatoes can have kind of this small end, and then they move into a more like robust center, right? You can cut that center piece out and then cut that like in half. so that it is closer in size to these like kind of end caps. And so think about that when you're cutting up your potatoes. But this is about the smallest size that I would use for a solid mashed potato. You can go smaller, but you're gonna have less flavor, and the texture will be different. Now, I'm gonna do like just a quick explanation. So like say you are used to having a potato maybe this size, or even you're like, I just want it to cook fast, right? You're like, I want it to cook faster. I want these potatoes to be able to be done in 20 minutes. Is that a terrible thing? No, it's not. It's not. You're behind time. You've created an entire schedule for your holiday feast, and you're like, oh no, I forgot about the potatoes, or it took so long to get the bird done or the roast done that now I don't have enough time. And this is your idea, right? Is to do this instead. That is not a terrible thing. You can, in fact, do this. But think about how much water is going to get around these pieces boiling compared to this, right? And so that's kind of like, I just visually want you to understand like how much more surface area there is for water to get into. And not only that, so like I've peeled the outside of this, right? But I actually like you're thinking about like how many molecules are kind of cut in half and exposed to that water to then go ahead and get in there. And so it's really just that. It's like you have to be much more careful. This is way more forgiving about over boiling and being in water too long versus these. These are in water too long, and you're gonna have like slop, and it's gonna be harder for you to save your potatoes. I will talk about ways to save your potatoes when we kind of are putting everything together, and I'm showing you kind of what you're looking for once we've riced and are starting to add like our butter and stuff to the potatoes. I'll talk about that more. But it's harder to save these potatoes than it is to save this, because this has less water kind of inundating all of those molecules than this is going to have. So just keep that in mind, right? Keep that in mind. You can make good potatoes. You can make great mashed potatoes, but it's easier to make a mistake when they are smaller, and you do lose a lot of flavor when you're doing this. Now, people swear by throwing this into the water. Boiling this with skin on, you clean, go ahead and scrub everything off, get all the dirt off, right? Clean them, and then these go in the pot, unpeeled. That's not bad either. And in fact, that is probably like, if you want to save as much possible flavor and have it be as starchy and fluffy as possible, this is the route to go. It's not how I do mine, because you have to take this out of the boiling water, you have to put it in an ice bath and shock it, you have to peel them, and then you have to start doing your ricing and getting everything kind of pushed through one of these to get them ready to make mashed potatoes. It's a lot of extra steps. It's not steps I want to do, and it's not a big enough difference to me that this feels worth it. But you can do that, and this will, like I said, this will give you the fluffiest, most potatoey tasting mashed potatoes that you can get. And a lot of people like to do like skin on mashed potatoes and stuff like that. So like if you peeled off and then threw the peels back into the pot after you riced it, like you could do that too. Maybe give them a rough chop depending on how large those peels are. But you can in fact do that. Just know like you're gonna be losing, like if you don't want peel in, you're gonna be losing a lot more of your potato. So I'm saying you have to use your 2.5 pounds or you're a little bit over 1 kilogram, right, worth of potatoes for this recipe. You're gonna need to buy more, because if you're baking or you're boiling and then peeling your potatoes, the starch, like the actual meat of the potato, will stick to the peel more. It doesn't just come off nice and easy. And so there's a good chance that you're gonna have to be not only peeling while something is really hot, so you're holding on to that. Hopefully you guys have gloves or like a towel that you don't mind getting dirty or something like that to hold onto the potato and peel it. You might also need to use a knife to get the peel off, which is gonna take off more of the potato. So you will end up with less potato to work with, which means you have to purchase more of the initial ingredient, and in order to have enough at the end to make the mashed potatoes with the correct ratios. So just keep that in mind. But this is actually like, this is essentially the quintessential way of doing this. It's just not my preferred, because it's way too much effort, and I'm a like low effort for best bang of your buck, like high ROI, like that's me. So like this is not a me thing, but people do swear by it, especially when it like, so like yes for mashed potatoes, but also something like if you're doing gnocchi, a lot of people swear by baking the potatoes. I just can't subscribe to it. It's just too difficult to get the peel off once it's cooked. So I peel first, ask questions later. But yeah, so that's a me thing. Now I've got, like I said, I've got my potatoes back here. They're just starting to foam up, but they're still not quite hot yet. Let's see if I can get this any higher. Oh, I can. Look at me go. Okay. We're going to get that up higher and get that water to where it needs to be. And then we'll move forward with that. What else can I chat about? There's probably not much. I'm going to run through chat over here and see if anybody's asked any questions, and then I can answer those. And maybe that'll take up just enough time so that I can show you guys what the boiling of the potatoes is supposed to look like. Dustin, I do have Twitch chat pulled up. I'm actually talking to you guys right now. It is a thing. Let's see. Okay, so that was the last place I looked. Any questions? Anybody have any questions that I could answer for you? Mostly about mashed potatoes? Hello over in YouTube. Hello. Any high altitude impacts on your potatoes? Yes. Yes, but not really. So because we don't have a lot of the high altitude cooking, it really affects things like your boiling point, and it's going to affect your taste receptors, right? So everything going on with your taste buds in your mouth, and even some of your olfactory receptors that are inside your sinuses. And it would probably, and it impacts obviously because of air pressure, it impacts things like leaveners, right? So if you're working with yeast or you're working with baking soda or something like that, that changes. Well, luckily this recipe doesn't use any leaveners, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter, like you can't overcook if you're boiling, you can't overcook something because once you hit boiling point, it doesn't change. That temperature does not change until there's no more water left, right? So if you're ever making something like a caramel, right, and you're doing, say, a wet method caramel, and you start with water in there, that caramel will just boil and boil and boil until there's no water left. Once there's no water left, that's when you start to get the browning and the sugar starts to actually caramelize. Same thing with brown butter. So like brown butter is everywhere. Once the butter's water content has evaporated out, that's when the milk solids in the butter start to brown. And so we've got so much water in that pot, and that water is not gonna all evaporate while we're doing anything with our potatoes, so it can't go over temperature. Now, I will say the higher altitude you are, the lower your boiling point is. So if you're at sea level, 212 or 100 Celsius is where you're hitting that boiling point. Here, it's different. I don't know what it is in Celsius, but in Fahrenheit, at 204, that's our boiling point here. So it's easier, and I'm about 5,000, 4,800 feet up from sea level. So for those of you who are even higher, like 6,000 and 10,000 feet up, depending on where you're living, like that becomes an even lower and lower number before things start to burn or roast or caramelize, and the Maillard reaction happens faster and all that kind of stuff. So it's something that you kind of have to be aware of with anything you're doing. But because we're not baking or sauteing, I don't have to worry about this. I just need to make sure that it's gently boiling, and that's the end of it. It doesn't matter really what temperature it is, as long as visually it is correct. And then you might need some more salt. Our taste receptors are different at higher altitudes. They do, in fact, make airplane food saltier because we don't taste as well at higher altitudes. And so you may need to add more salt than you would normally use. This recipe was made for a lower altitude, and so salt to taste. And if you feel like it needs a little bit more, or you just really like your food saltier, just add some more salt until you're happy with it. But you may need more salt in this recipe if you're at a higher altitude. So yeah, just make sure it's visually boiling correctly, and you might have to add more salt. Those are really the only changes at a high altitude, because this recipe doesn't use leaveners, and we're only boiling. We're not like baking or sauteing or using like any kind of really high heat. Is the potato ricer for quick mashing, or does it play another role? The potato ricer, it's for quick mashing. I would say it that way. It aerates the potatoes. So it basically breaks the potato down into molecules that are small enough that it will get like nice and creamy when you start adding other ingredients. You don't have lumps, right? The way that you might. I've never in my life been able to make a super smooth mashed potato with like a hand mixer. I feel like those do not, they kind of crush the molecules and crush the pieces of the potato and like mash them together. Whereas a ricer, it gets pushed through once, gets pushed through these holes right here once, and it doesn't go back around and keep kind of knocking into them and smashing them. And it very much is you push it through, and not only does it break down those molecules, it also incorporates air into them, so that they remain fluffier. If you're beating and crushing and kind of tamping everything down together, it's going to make them gummy. Water and heat and starch together create a gel, which is going to that's what makes your mashed potatoes gummy, is if you're over smashing them or you're over mixing them. And so this way I can kind of push them through this once and then gently mix in my other ingredients. And I'm not sitting there over agitating them over and over and over again, trying to incorporate anything. I can just gently, you'll see when I'm mixing it together, I can just gently use a spatula and call it a day. And so you just end up with a much better texture for the final result of your mashed potatoes. So it does. I mean, it really is meant to be just a quick masher, but it also does help incorporate air. It helps cool the potatoes down faster. It does a lot of stuff, but it mostly helps incorporate air and keeps your potatoes fluffy. Where does one acquire the Little Spoon apron? This was a custom order. So I guess like if you wanted to have one made, you could. This is by Tillet. They're my favorite apron company. Also not sponsored. But yeah, I really like them. It's not, they were actually out of the specific apron that I wanted, but this works really well. They usually have a pocket here for like thermometers, like a little probe thermometer, instant read thermometer, something like that. And then this does have a pocket, an internal pocket here for me to kind of put maybe a phone or something. But there are ones that have two pockets that go diagonal this way so that you can also kind of put your hands in or put stuff in your pockets, and I really like them. But yeah, Tillet is the company. You would have to, I guess, get my logo and be like, can you also embroider it, and ask them to do that, but that's extra money, so. You made a mistake getting a plastic ricer. I didn't know they made plastic ricers. Okay, let's do, let me see how far we are. Okay, actually, I will talk about ricers when we return, when those are done boiling, and we actually start using the ricer. I'll go ahead and I'll talk about that. I did not know that they made plastic ricers. That's really interesting. But I'm gonna go ahead, and for the people who are not here during the live, if you found this video at a later date, there is gonna be a little bit of kind of movie magic right here, because it's gonna take another 30 minutes or so for those guys to finish boiling. And so we're gonna do a quick, I guess if you can move, I can bring this to the counter. We'll bring this to the counter. Just for a second. Let me do this. Huh? I'm gonna move the pot over here, I guess. Okay, yeah, you don't have a pot. I get it. Okay, we're gonna talk about this, and then we'll talk about ricers when we come back. But there is gonna be a bit of a cut, so like if you're waiting for your potatoes to boil, just pause the video, and then I'm gonna be like, hey, they're done, and they'll be done for you as well, and you can restart the video. So that'll stay on. Okay, so you don't want it to boil much more than this. Do I have video of what it looks like right now? Because I can't see what I look like right now or what anything is on screen. So you can see it's kind of like moving around a little bit, right? You're getting a little bit of movement. And that's that, and like there are like a little bit of bubbles kind of gently going. You've got your kind of scum situation up here on top. It's created a bit of a foam. That's just starch molecules kind of creating foam on top because of the heat. And you're gonna just let it go like this. And this is what you want. If it does start to boil and you catch it boiling, as long as it's like a gentle simmer and you're just seeing like little kind of bubbles kind of slowly coming up, that's okay. If you're seeing a rolling boil, that's too much, turn it down. So like if you see, let's do this. Why not? Okay, so I would even say that you could get to, let's see. This is still fine. We're still just kind of like moving around. You're seeing every now and then you're seeing on the surface kind of have like a little bit of a ripple. That's a bubble coming up. Okay. So like even this is good. Once we hit that boil, I'll tell you guys, okay, this is too hot. You always have to start with a lid. Stove takes too long to get water to boil. Don't use a lid. Just let it take that long. They'll be better. Just let it take that long. They'll cook more uniformly if you let that water come to temperature for however long it takes. I know that sounds counterintuitive, and I know it means that it's going to take a longer time, but don't bother with the lid. Just let it do its thing. Can this little burner make a rolling boil? Yes, it can. I actually don't even have the power all the way up. This is, like, I would say this is probably too hot. So I'm seeing multiple bubbles coming up. This water is getting pretty agitated. This isn't gonna move, let me move this out of the way. This isn't gonna move the potatoes around too much. But to me, like, I'm seeing these bubbles. This is like the very top end of what I would do. Because once these potatoes start, like, see this guy right here is getting moved. I don't know if you can see it. This guy is getting kind of shaken around a little bit. I don't want that. You don't want everything to start kind of rubbing up against each other. You want it to boil and cook through without the potatoes getting too agitated. So like this is too hot. See how I'm getting all that? If the scum was here, you would see that a little bit better too. Now I need you back. See how we're pushing through and this scum is getting like really moved around? You don't want that. That's too hot. That's too hot. We're going to bring it down. Okay. I'm bringing it back down. Okay. Might take a second. And if you need to take something off of a burner so you can adjust it, do that. Like if you come to it and it's just like rolling boil, like I didn't even let it go as like high as a rolling boil. But if you're seeing that, go ahead and just take it off the burner until this, take the pot off the burner until this can be adjusted a little bit better, and then you can put it back on. But like this is maximum right here. This is kind of where I like to sit. Is right here. You've got little tiny bubbles kind of coming up where we've got that kind of movement where it looks like it's kind of just shifting a little bit and moving around, but we're not actively like boiling. Okay. Move this off. Back over here. I'm gonna bring this down. The problem with, see, this is great. I have an induction cooktop upstairs. This one down here is electric. And once it gets too hot, it's really hard to make sure that the electric cooktops go low enough. Actually, let me leave this out because I'm going to use it. It was really hard to make sure that that the electric cooktops, like, they stay hot once they're hot, and it's hard to get the temperature back down. Induction is like super, super sensitive, and because it's magnets. And the second that friction is gone and the magnets kind of stop rubbing together, the heat is gone. And the only heat that's left over is residual heat in your pots and your pans. So it makes it really easy to be very precise with your cooking on induction. Okay, this looks good to me. I'm gonna let this go. And then for those of you who are not live, I will see you when those are done boiling. Cool. Okay, let's see. Okay, Pollux, I talked about this a little bit earlier, so I don't mind talking about it again, since this is not going to be included in the playlist for the people who are not watching this live. I use russets because they are starchier and they create a lighter, fluffier mashed potato. You can also use something like a Yukon Gold or like a yellow potato. They're waxier. They have far less starch, and so you're not going to get that light, fluffy texture. You're going to get like a creamy, dense texture. And I just honestly prefer. I prefer to have that fluffy mashed potato over a creamy mashed potato. But it really is whatever you like. But again, just this recipe is specifically for russets. So I imagine you would need, I don't even know if you would need like more or less butter or something like that for a Yukon Gold. You'd probably, because it's a denser potato, you'd probably need more. And this already has quite a bit of butter. I've got like 8 tablespoons of butter in this. So you'd probably, yeah, there's like 113.5 grams of butter for 1 kilogram worth of potato for 2.5 pounds of potatoes. So you've got like a cup, or no, how many is in a cup? It's a half a cup, sorry, a half a cup of butter, which is a lot. So I imagine you'd need even more if you were going to use Yukon Gold, just because they're so dense. Okay, so I told, for those of you who maybe weren't here before we started this, I told you guys that I would make some gravy. So we're going to work on some gravy while that cooks. Let's see. Make sure that everything I have is rinsed and dried off completely. I keep losing my... Where is my second... Okay, hold the phone. My paper towels keep getting stolen from in here. They've been disappearing on me. I want to make sure it's dry. So the first thing that I do when I make a gravy is I make a roux. So I'm going to boil down, up, whatever, get really hot, some oil, and then throw some flour in there. Or some fat, I should say, and then throw flour in and make a roux to then thicken my beef stock. I have beef stock here. This would work the same way if you had like turkey stock or chicken stock or something like that. This is kind of like a universal gravy situation. But you want to make sure that you don't have any water on any of your pot or your utensils or whatever you're using, because the second water is introduced into your roux, it's going to start to thicken and sputter and whatever, because oil and water do not mix, and we don't want that to happen. You just want to make sure everything is really dry before you do it. So I actually have here, when I make gravies, I really like to use the fat from the stock. And as you can see here, I've got the fat on top, and then it kind of floats to the top. And then this was just some of the stock that kind of settled underneath it. Typically, I don't do exactly this way. I will put it in like little silicone molds and I'll pour. So like if when I'm straining out my stocks, I'll put stock in here, and then I will be pouring out all of my stock, and then the fat that's left over down at the bottom. Once it runs clear and I no longer have the stock in it, I will pour all of that fat into individual little guys that are anywhere from a tablespoon to like a quarter cup in size, which is about 15 milliliters by volume to 60 milliliters by volume. I'll pour it into like little silicone things and I'll freeze them. And then I will use those as kind of like pucks. And then that way, fat is flavor, right? So like I could use a canola oil like I have back here. There's no flavor in that. If you are using this, it came from your stock, it tastes like beef or it tastes like chicken or whatever. Using this is going to give you a much more flavorful gravy than if I were using one of these guys back here. And so that is kind of what I do is I will go ahead and freeze some of these and then I will use that. You're gonna be using, for every cup, 250 mils by volume of gravy that you have, you're gonna be using about a tablespoon, okay, 15 milliliters by volume, okay, of both your fat here and of flour, wherever I put my flour back here. This could be a little bit hotter. There we go. Okay. Roux it up. This is going to be interesting. What do I feel like using? I guess we'll just pull this guy out. It should be able to ice on the top of this. I think I left it out long enough. Yeah, okay. So I should be able to just scoop this guy out. I've got probably a little bit more. I'd say a little bit more than 2 cups in here. A little bit more than about 480 mils, but we'll just go with it. I probably got about 500 mils in that. So like 2 1/4 cups, give or take. And I'm gonna do essentially a little bit more than 2 times what I just said. So I basically said the 15 mils or a tablespoon of each of those things. You can do it by weight. I do have a recipe online. I believe it's under the dry brine reverse seared prime rib. There's like an au jus recipe. And then in the notes of the au jus recipe, it's like, if you want this to be a gravy and not au jus, here's what you do. And I believe I have it by weight as well, instead of just by volume. So if you want to be even more precise and you want to go by weight, then it is there for you to use. So, okay, so let's turn this guy on. We're gonna get it going. We're gonna get it nice and hot. And then I'm gonna make sure that I scoop out what I need. And I'm not gonna be super precise for this. I really am not. Like, it's just you and me, right? It's you and me and not an exact recipe, and we're gonna have some fun. Okay. So there is still a little, oh, that smells, see, it already smells so good. That already smells so good. There's a little bit of moisture in it. So you're gonna hear a little bit of that popping. That's okay. We're gonna wait until that popping stops and I know that there's no water left. I don't want that flour to start seizing and thickening when I add it. So I wanna make sure there's no more moisture in that pan. Now, I will also say that this, like I said, this is basically, cooked the stock and then poured kind of the fat that was left over. This is not like pure tallow. So you can buy beef tallow or you can cook down your fat. So like if you make a stock and you've got fat, you can keep rendering that until it is like super cooked down and it is pure. And that's okay if you want to go through and do all of that. I don't really do that. But you can. You absolutely can. And it'll give you a better, it'll be a more stable, like shelf stable product, right? So like it'll last longer in your freezer or in your fridge. If it is pure enough, you can even keep it in your pantry. It doesn't even need to be refrigerated. But I haven't typically gone that far into it. I just put it in a container and toss it in my freezer until I need it, and it's good for several months. So I'm usually making those kinds of stocks and things like a week or so before we have a holiday. So I don't ever really need all of that time. Okay, so now we've got no more, you can hear, it's not sputtering anymore. All of the liquid is out. Now we've just got some really hot oil. I'm gonna turn that down quite a bit. And then I'm going to add in with the other side. And this is why I like having two sides to my measuring spoons. We're gonna add that in. Same thing, okay. And then I'm just gonna start kind of going and letting that cook. You want this to be cooking on like low, medium, low. I'd say medium low. I'm gonna add a little bit more. It's a little bit liquidy. Oops, wrong side. My bad. I don't think I'm gonna add all of it. We're just gonna add a little bit of it. So I'm looking for a specific texture. It smells really good. Why use stock fat for gravies instead of butter? It has a higher smoke point. Butter starts to burn much faster. Butter is not, like, unless you're gonna keep it at a super, super, super low temperature, I would not recommend using butter for a roux at all. I would prefer that you use a neutral high smoke point oil over butter. And like if you were gonna not go the like, you know, beef fat, chicken fat, turkey fat, like whatever that looks like route. So essentially what I'm making right now is a blonde roux. And I am only cooking this until I've cooked the flour flavor out. So flour can be kind of chalky and like an earthy, musty kind of flavor. And if you toast it out, right, because we've got oil, it's hot, you can toast that flavor out as the flour cooks and hydrates, and then it does not affect the flavor of your resulting gravy. If you add in your stock too quickly and you've not let this like brown up a little bit and cook for at least like say 7 minutes, then you might end up with a little bit of a flour flavor kind of hanging out and a little bit of a kind of a chalky texture at the bottom of it, and you don't want that, right? So we want to make sure that we're fully hydrating and cooking the flour before we start adding in any of our other liquid. I'm feeling like I should probably, I'm a little worried about what this is gonna do because it's actually ice. It's not gonna mix in fast enough. So I'm actually gonna put this in the microwave and heat this up. Let's see. Actually, okay, we're gonna use this the way we should use this, right? Reheat. Do we have soup in here? I've got beverage. Baked potato. There is nothing for soup? That's ridiculous. They've got chicken nuggets, but not soup on this thing. Let's do beverage. Code 1. Does not give me any information on how to do this. Custom cook? Nope, that's not what I needed. What does it say? It says sensor control. Cook category. Custom cook. Oh, here. Okay, sensor cook and cook. 1. Does it let me do like how many of a beverage? Oh, that was stop. Cook. 1. Start. We'll learn how to use this microwave. Okay, now I will also say, really what I just did was not what you should do. Don't walk away from your roux. But I will also say that if you have a 1-to-1 ratio and you're cooking on a low enough temperature, it's not gonna like break anything if you walk away for like 30 seconds or so, which is exactly what I have here. If it's at too high a temperature, you'll see it start to, it'll actually start to burn, and we don't want that. This is actually done. So I'm going to turn this down even further. You'll see that I picked up just a little bit of brown color, so it's almost like tan. I believe it's called noisette or something like that in the French like vernacular. It's not yet a brunette roux, but it's like a tan roux or like a little bit overly blonde. It's almost like a peanut butter color right now. And this is more than enough. I didn't even need to go this far. That's not cooked through yet, so. I think I kind of want to check my potatoes too. Yep, not even close. Okay. I prefer to use a spatula, a high heat spatula over a, so like you're thinking silicone. A lot of companies will give you the temperature that a spatula can go up to. I prefer to find something that can go up over 550 in a silicone. This is a Le Creuset. This is probably my most heat resistant spatula that I have. So usually when I'm doing something like a roux or caramel, this is the spatula that I use. But I prefer a spatula to a whisk because a whisk doesn't get to all the corners of a pot. And it annoys me, and it can splatter if you're whisking too like vigorously, I guess, for lack of better terminology. It can splatter, and then that's a problem too. You don't want to do that. Okay, this will be good enough. Okay, so in comes this, and it is about to steam and boil and roil and all that, but I've got enough liquid that it will be fine. And I think just keep mixing. And it's gonna keep, I can feel it thickening up. And I've got it on a really low temperature now, so we're gonna bring the heat back up. It smells really good. That's not what I want. And basically what I want to do is I want to bring this to a boil. I want to bring it to a boil so that roux can really get incorporated. And thicken, and then I will know, like it has to boil and then come down from temp in order to know how thick it's gonna be. And then at that point, you can decide if you wanna make like another roux on the side and add into it, or if you wanna add more of your liquid or whatever that's gonna look like. For now, let's just see where we get. This is gonna be nice and thick. I think I wanna thin this out a little bit, which I have some left over, so I can. Okay. So as you can see, we've got a super thick gravy here. Gonna add some more of this in. You thin this out a little bit more. Okay, I think that's good. And again, I'm gonna bring this up to temp. I'm gonna let it boil, see where we are. And then this is, I feel like this is a good point. I don't feel like I'm gonna be adding any more. I think we hit our 2 cup. This holds more than 2 cups. I don't even know what it does. I forget. Like I was so used to I went and bought glass containers because I was tired of heating things up in plastic or like having to like run water over them, pop them out into another bowl or something and heat that up. So I went and bought glass containers, but none of the measurements are like the same. So I went from having like, you know, a 4 cup and a 2 cup and whatever to like having a like 2 2/4 and 3 3/4. And I'm like, nothing is ever like super precise anymore, which is a little frustrating for me because I rely on that precision when I'm cooking. But it is what it is. We work around it. If you cook enough, you know what you're looking for, which kind of helps. All right, so now I'm gonna let this come to a boil. These are very much not cooked yet. Not even close. Boil. Let's do. Anybody have any questions? If you wanted to, you could add butter at the end of this to just add some extra emulsification. So monte beurre, right? And so you can add a couple tablespoons of butter to this and use a hand blender or immersion blender or a hand, like whatever you want to call it. Use an immersion blender and kind of like pass it through with the butter and get it really, really kind of creamy and blended down. And that would give you an even richer final product. But that's it. That's your gravy. Done. And it will thicken as it cools too. You just need to hit, actually I have a gravy boat. You just need to hit, we'll do this. You need to hit that boiling point for it to, like for the roux to kind of activate. And then after that, there we go. After that is when you're gonna let that temperature come down and it'll just kind of keep thickening as that temperature comes down from boiling. Okay, turn that off for now. I am going to finish the potatoes on this guy. So I want to make sure that it's got some time to cool off a little bit before I come back to it, because this guy doesn't like to stay hot for a very long time. Yes, we have a rock climbing gym here. Ooh. We do. Gonna need some sour cream and some milk. I think that's everything that I need. Now we just have to chill until those potatoes are done. Everything else is done. Salt, milk, sour cream, pepper. Gravy. Oh my God, that's good. That's very nice. Woo! These. Cool. I'm set and ready to go. Whenever that is going to happen. Do we have any questions while we're chatting or hanging out, waiting for the potatoes? I knew this was going to happen. I was like, we're going to have potatoes boiling because usually it's something that's like you leave to do while you're doing other stuff. Why can I hear myself? Let's make sure that we move this. There we go. Cream, milk, or sour cream. I use milk and sour cream. A lot of sour cream and a lot of butter. And a little bit of milk, just to thin it out a little bit. Cocktail time? Is it though? Is it? Ooh. We are getting closer. I've got about maybe 5 minutes on the potatoes. I'm hitting resistance on them. So I guess that's something that I could have talked about and I'll have to talk about again is you shouldn't have any resistance with your fork going through. It should kind of go through and almost break the potato in half. You're going to see like kind of starchy, rough outer texture, and then the fork should just fork, knife, whatever you're using, should just slide through the potato. If you meet any resistance and it feels like you have to push harder, it's not cooked all the way through and you're gonna end up with lumps in your potatoes. Even if it goes through the ricer, you might get a little bit of grittiness. Clean as you cook or wait till you're done. I clean as I cook only if I know that I need to reuse something. I'm terrible at cleaning as I cook. I want to be, I aspire to be the clean as you cook person. I'm not, I'm in fact not. Because what I end up doing is I end up over extending myself, and then I'm making too many things at once and I don't have time to clean. I just kind of go from one thing to the next thing. Lep does the cleaning, yeah. I aspire to be the person who cleans as I cook. That would be great. That would be it for sure. Oh, I just hit the mic. Sorry, friends. Did that hurt your ears? I apologize. My bad. If only you had an assistant that could clean for you. There's really not much cleaning when it comes to this. We just toss stuff in the dishwasher and call it a day. They burned a little bit. Uh-oh. Hello, welcome. Yeah, exactly, Tiago. Exactly. Yeah, on holidays, I think Lep gets a little anxious and he like sees the kitchen getting steadily dirtier and walks in and goes, okay, what can I clean and what can't I clean? And he'll like start cleaning stuff, or I'll be like, I need to use that again and I need to use that. So clean those things, rinse or clean those things first and then come back to them and all that. You did. Yeah. I tend to make these about an hour and a half before we eat. Sometimes 2 hours. They're fine. Okay, so it's gonna take, 45 minutes or so, an hour with prep and cook time, to even get the potatoes ready to then get them kind of riced and get them back in the pot and then make it. It takes about 15 minutes to finish the potatoes, from putting them through a ricer to adding the ingredients and mixing it and having them ready. We can talk about this. Actually, I'll talk about this when we get back on again. But you have to be careful with potatoes. Their environment, low oxygen, low acid, is kind of like a breeding ground for botulism. And so you have to be careful if they're sitting in the danger zone, which is that 40 Fahrenheit to 140 Fahrenheit, which I believe I have written down somewhere. I can give you guys that in Celsius. It's about 4.5 to 60 degrees Celsius. It's not good for potatoes, even with the sour cream and other ingredients in them. It's not good for them to be sitting for over an hour after they've been made. So I tend to like to have them done no closer than like 30 minutes to the meal, and then I'll sit them on the back burner with a lid on them and let them kind of stay warm. But I keep them on like warm or low, and I try to mix them every like 5 minutes. I'll go back and give them a little bit of a mix, because I want to make sure the bottom isn't getting too hot, and that the milk that's in there is kind of getting too hot. You don't want the milk, because it will split, and then the texture changes, and we don't want the texture to change on your potatoes. So I would say, like, don't start them more than 2 hours before you want to plate. But they can be done about 30 minutes before dinner starts, so that you can finish up on your other stuff, and you can, carve whatever you baked or roasted, and like finish reheating casseroles or like any of that stuff, or desserts. You can definitely kind of like do that. But yeah, if you need to, you can go about like 2 hours or so before start making them. But I wouldn't push it much further than that. All right, let's put on these potatoes. That's really close. That's really close to being done. 2 minutes. But yeah, and if you want, this is again something I could talk about later. If you want, you can make the potatoes, just the potatoes, in advance. And you can, I would say to make them, pour them out of your pot and into a colander, and immediately put them into a container and cover them and put them in the fridge. And then reheat them. You have to be a little careful about reheating them. They have to reheat on like a really low temperature to bring them all the way through. But they have to be at a high enough temperature that they're going to melt the butter, right? And that you can put them through a ricer, and they haven't, because the starch will gel up as it cools, right? And so it's important to make mashed potatoes when the potatoes are still warm. And so they need to be warmed up, so A, they can go through this, and then B, so that when you're adding in the butter, it melts and you can really get a good texture. But I would tell you, if you wanted to make the potatoes, like boil them in advance themselves, you can, and then bring them slowly back up to a good temperature, make the mashed potatoes, and then, so like if you need a burner open, there's less time kind of on the stovetop day of. Like that's also kind of an option. But I wouldn't recommend making mashed potatoes and then just reheating them day of, because that milk is going to be a problem. you can do it. The texture will change. The texture will change slightly. The milk will probably cause an issue, so you're gonna have to like add a little extra sour cream and add a little extra butter to re-emulsify all those ingredients together, because the reheating, especially if you're reheating them in a microwave, that's gonna burst some of those starch cells. It'll just change the texture quite a bit, and so you'd have to kind of mess around to get it back to something that is close enough to what the original mashed potatoes were. Yeah. I mean, you can't mashed potatoes with cheese. You can't go wrong, right? We make the filling for pierogi, and we'll use farmer's cheese, or we'll use a like American cheese and Velveeta cheese for like a super smooth, cheesy mashed potato for the filling. I could just eat those. Like I could just eat those as is. I know a lot of people that will do brown butter and garlic. So you would grate garlic over like or into the mashed potatoes and then like kind of mix that in. I'd probably prefer roasted garlic just because I think then you get a better paste and you wouldn't get like pieces of garlic. But if you wanted to have a stronger garlic flavor, then like grating garlic into your potatoes is another option. I'm not a huge fan of truffle or even horseradish. Like sometimes it's good, but like most of the time I don't use horseradish for anything. So browning butter toasts the milk solids in the butter and it gives it a nutty flavor. Or like if you like toast bread, it's very akin to like the flavor of toasted bread or like toasted like peanuts and it's kind of a thing. It's just not like a full peanut flavor, but it's like a toasted kind of nutty, toasty flavor. And everybody seems to really like that. Yeah, it gives it also a warmer flavor. So if you think about something that's like clean and straight through, that is the flavor that was intended. And then you add in something like a browned butter or like other ingredients, it like shifts the flavor a little bit. And that brown butter just gives it a warmer, deeper flavor. Pulls it away from that like I'm a one note kind of situation and then like adds extra roundness to it. If that makes any sense. Any at all. That's done. I think we can call this okay. I think I'm ready to come back. Lots of sense. Okay, good. Next time you make boxed coffee cake, you're gonna put some brown butter, even though it doesn't say you to. You can put up to 1/4 cup of brown butter into a cake or a quick bread or something like that. I typically will add 2 tablespoons. Oh, actually, okay, wait, hold on a second. Glass, have you ever made the toasted milk powder in my recipes? If you've ever make the toasted milk powder and toss 2 tablespoons of that into your, because the problem is like, if you're doing a brown butter, okay, I think I mentioned it earlier that if you're browning butter, the milk solids don't brown until all of the water has evaporated out of the butter. And so you can do a couple of different things and you have to be careful. If a recipe doesn't call for melted butter, you have to let that brown butter sit either out on the table or in a refrigerator to re-solidify so that you can use it to cream butter and sugar together. But then you also have to add about a tablespoon or a tablespoon or half a tablespoon. I have it online. If you look for like ultimate guide to toasted milk powder, it's like got a whole bunch of information in there. I think it's a half a tablespoon. I want to say it's 7.5 milliliters. You lose that much liquid from a stick of butter. So you have to re-add that amount of liquid in, or your ratios are off because it evaporates all of the water content out of the butter. So you have to think about what texture you need it to be and temperature you need it to be, and then how much water you've lost, and reintroducing that water into your recipe in order for it to be the same. If you make the toasted milk powder, you can just scoop and toss it in and not really think about it. But I like to add either toasted milk powder, just in general, powdered milk, or peanut butter powder, like the peanut butter protein powders. I like to add all of that into like cakes and quick breads. It adds extra fat and protein, so it gives it better structure. It creates a slightly denser but softer crumb, and it holds on to moisture, so it stays fresher longer on like your countertop, and you have longer to eat it before they start going really stale. And so I kind of do that with all of my baked goods anyway. Okay. And we're back. Okay, so now we've got our boiled potatoes here. I'm going to put these into a colander that I've got here in my sink. There we go. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to take the pot that these were in, I'm gonna set it right back down. I've got an induction cooktop here. I've got a single burner that we're gonna be using so that you guys can kind of watch what I'm up to. I'm gonna turn this on, but I'm gonna turn this on to really low. Okay, so it's at a 1 power level. I'm gonna just pull the moisture off the bottom of this pan, and I'm going to let these sit. So these have been in here for about 30 seconds. I'm gonna let them kind of just steam for like 1 to 2 minutes. And then I'm gonna put them through my potato ricer and back into this pot that's at I can do a half power. Yes, that's at super low, right? So you want this to be on warm or low. And essentially what that's gonna do is it's gonna not cook your potatoes, and it's going to help keep them heated so that there's more steam that comes out of them. So we don't wanna fully dry out our potatoes, and we want our potatoes to be warm enough that the butter melts, right? We don't want them to cool off. But we do want to get as much moisture out of these as possible so that the butter and the sour cream and the milk that we're adding to them really get pulled into the molecules of the potatoes, right? So the more water we get out, the more space there is for other liquids to kind of go in. And then that really gets to flavor your potatoes. And it gets, like the texture can just be better because there's more fat that kind of can get pulled into that potato structure. So that's what we're going for. Okay, so now now that these have been sitting out for like 1.5 minutes or so, you'll see them start to kind of turn a little bit of like a little white will kind of show up as they dry out. And that's kind of where, like when they first come out, they're just like, they look wet, and then they'll start to the starches will kind of solidify and dry out a little bit, and your potatoes are gonna start looking a little ashy, and that's when you wanna start ricing them. Now, somebody mentioned in the chat that they got a plastic potato ricer. I didn't know that was a thing. Plastic is probably not your best bet because you're putting boiled potatoes through it. And I feel like, I mean, it must be a heavy duty one, so like maybe it works, but I think that like metal is probably your best bet, depending on like what you're up to. But I also kind of want to talk a little bit about a problem that somebody else mentioned to me a couple days ago that I honestly didn't think about. I had considered getting a potato ricer like years and years ago, and I bought this one, and it has been like tried and true, no issues, no problems, love this thing. But it is a whole thing. Okay, so you've got like, I don't even know how to explain this. It's like one basket, fully intact, one basket. There are no parts that go in and out. So some people, when they buy a potato ricer, it comes with like a disc insert so that you can change the size of the holes on the bottom to different sizes. And I didn't know that it existed when I bought this. And I'm actually really glad that I didn't know, because I probably would have bought it. And it turns out it's super hard to clean. And if the potatoes get like stuck kind of down the sides of it, it can like pop up and make it like really weird to use. So I do recommend, like, I know that it kind of is enticing to get one where you're like, oh, interchangeable disc, that's so great. I can use it for a whole bunch of different stuff. Just buy a solid one that has a single basket and doesn't have interchangeable discs. I think it'll probably cause you more trouble than it's worth. If you really need different sizes, buy multiples and see what you can find out there. Because the discs apparently are not great. But yeah, you can see like I'm just kind of tossing them in and pushing it through. This can get harder to do if you like are getting kind of up there in years. This is not great for people who have like arthritis. But there's really not much else you can do. You can get a mill. If you can't use a potato ricer, you can get a food mill. And essentially that's just like a mesh kind of cone, and you have, so like you can kind of either use, it either has a crank that pushes everything through, or you can use like a spoon or something and kind of like push it through a fine mesh strainer. Those are kind of options. Honestly, those are probably just as hard to do, like labor-wise, as doing something like this. So I don't know how much I can like recommend one of those things for anybody who needs it. Maybe just like get somebody to come and help you, because the hand mixers, while they are obviously easier on your wrists and your hands, they're not going to do as good of a job as a potato ricer. So if you're looking for like ultra smooth potatoes, like those things they're just not going to cut it, unfortunately. I'm just trying to use the last bits of this. But yeah, stick with metal if you're going for a ricer, and get the ones that are a single basket with no discs that you can switch out. I do have this linked, the specific one linked in my recipe. If you're online, you can click right through it. It takes you to an Amazon shop. If you don't want to shop from an Amazon shop, totally understand. But you can at least look at the product and see what it looks like, and like read the description, and then go somewhere else and see if you can find kind of a similar or exactly the same thing. So what I'm gonna do, I've got this, so obviously this is on low, we're cooking, I can still feel steam coming out of it, I want that, right? And I'm just gonna kind of give it, you can see steam coming out maybe. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. But you can basically, we're just kind of gonna fluff it. I'm not trying to like push anything down, I'm not trying to mix anything at this point. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm releasing these pockets of steam, so that we're letting, again, out a little bit more moisture before we start adding in our other stuff. And I'm also going to start measuring my other ingredients. Oh, that's a good, okay, so somebody in chat said that they have one that has different baskets, but there's not a disc to swap at all. Okay, so maybe if you wanted to find something, if you wanted to find a potato ricer that gave you the same results of this guy, is don't buy the one with the individual discs, but only the ones that are individual baskets that fit all the way down into it, and the baskets become interchangeable. That's cool. Okay, so there you go. Or buy the one that's just got that. Honestly, I haven't had a situation where I wished that it had been like a bigger sized holes, I guess, for lack of better terminology, for the potatoes coming out of that. I think this is a perfectly acceptable size. And so I haven't found the need to have anything larger. I guess for the person who has the one with different baskets, have you ever switched it out? Just out of curiosity? See, okay, so you use an old-fashioned potato masher, and that is also doable, but that is going to give you the same texture as a hand mixer will. When you're smushing down all of those molecules, you're creating that gel that I talked about. It's going to gellify between the starch, the heat, and the moisture. You're going to create a gel that's going to make your potatoes gummy. The best thing, what you want to do is you want to get them as fluffy and aerated as possible, as quickly as possible, and then not agitate them anymore. And that's why a ricer is going to give you the best texture of your mashed potatoes, or like a food mill is going to give you the best texture. The hand mixers and the potato mashers are actually like swishing down and breaking all of those molecules so much over and over again that it starts to make it gummy if you're not fast enough. So you have to be careful. Not really, but it is easier to clean and store. Okay. Yeah, because you can pop it right out, right? And then just clean the whole thing. But you've never really exchanged out the baskets. See, yeah, like that's kind of my thought. It's like it's one of those things where it's like, oh, cool, more options, but then you don't actually end up using the options. It's good that you can take the basket out. That's a really cool thing for like cleanliness. Oh, that's a good comment. Okay, so somebody else said to make sure, I didn't realize that, I didn't even think about that, to make sure that you get one with grips on the handles and not solid metal. Because there are ones that do not have this kind of silicone-y, rubbery grip, and you're basically just holding on to metal, which can be slippery or just frankly annoying to kind of hold on to. It might hurt after a while, depending on how many potatoes. Like if you're doing a meal for 30 people or something like that, depending on how many people you have over for the holidays, that might be a lot of metal squeezing against your hands. That might hurt after a while. This recipe specifically is meant for it's about 4 cups of mashed potatoes, which I usually serve, like in general, it's like a half a cup per person is kind of where you are. So this can serve up to 8 people. But if you are a family, 4 mashed potatoes, much like the person earlier who said I save 45% of my stomach space for mashed potatoes on Thanksgiving, then maybe you want to go a little bit over that and just have leftovers. You can double, quadruple, whatever you want this recipe, and it'll work out. Just salt to taste at the end, and you'll be fine. Only half a cup, not around here. Yeah. That's funny. Okay, so we need 8 tablespoons, which is about 113.5 grams. It's about half of this. So essentially what I'm gonna do, I'm actually gonna get a paper plate, which I have in here somewhere. There we go. And we're gonna just cut this in half. I'm not gonna be too precise today. That's what you're supposed to use. If it's close, it's close. Oh, it would be helpful if I did this. 112.8, that's good enough. That's close enough. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna cut this into like pats of butter. Butter goes first, okay? So I'm measuring out this butter. Butter goes into your mashed potatoes first. And there are 4 reasons for that. Far be it from me to not give a bajillion reasons for why I do things. So essentially, what I want to do is I want to get fat into the potatoes as much as I possibly can. So I mentioned earlier that we are taking a bunch of moisture out of the potatoes by letting them sit and letting them kind of steam a little bit more over high heat. We want that butter to melt and that liquid and that fat to get into those molecules and get sucked into the potato. If I add the milk and the sour cream and the butter all at once, it's not going to be as uniform as it is when I'm of like butter and that kind of smooth creaminess. It won't be as uniform. So I'm making sure that I'm getting the butter in first. Okay, so it's more uniform. You're going to end up with a better flavor. Let's see, what else did I list here? Emulsification. Okay, so I've got written butter has a natural emulsifiers that help milk and sour cream hold and mix with the potatoes better. So it's kind of like a building block and a glue that then allows for the milk and the sour cream to really stick to the potatoes and not kind of like go outside. They kind of helps pull them in. It also, the fat helps to suspend, whoops. Oh no, it didn't fall out. It was just really close. The fat also helps to suspend the starch molecules in the potato, and it protects them from getting gummier, right? Just a little bit. So it gives you a little bit more play, a little bit more flexibility in when you're adding things and how much you're adding. So like if you make a mistake and you maybe add too much milk or too much whatever, it actually will help with that. So you have a little bit more play in the joints than if you added everything at once. Now you'll notice I already have a pretty good texture here. Yay, looks so yummy. And the butter, once it gets into the mashed potatoes, it's almost like when you're cooking onions and they start out like super opaque, right? And as you cook them, they get a little bit more translucent and the color itself turns a little bit darker. And that's kind of what's happened here. So your potatoes start out like a really kind of bright, like kind of chalky kind of look. And then once they take on that butter and it gets pulled into the molecular structure of the boiled potatoes, of your riced potatoes, it takes on a like more yellow and also a wetter, just, I don't even know how to explain this, like a wetter texture and a more dense texture. Okay, so now that I've got this, you can see I don't have any more butter melting. It's all been really incorporated. You can see how gentle I'm being with the potatoes. Now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add in the sour cream and the milk. I hope I'm explaining that well, but it's very akin to like what you see happen with onions when you're cooking onions or sautéing up onions. Okay, so now we're going to be adding in, let's see, 3/4 cup, about 215 grams of sour cream. 3/4 cup is also 180 mils if you're doing it by volume, which is what I'm going to do today. Doing it by volume. And I don't know, did I find a 3/4 cup? Half a cup. I feel like I don't have a 3/4 cup thing down here. I might do the 1 cup and 1/2 cup. I guess we're doing it this way. Let's see. We're just going to work around this. I don't have a spatula small enough for this. I'm still keeping this on. If you really wanted to at this point, you could turn off your stovetop, but I'm just going to keep it on low to make sure that I'm keeping everything warm and making it easier for everything to incorporate. I prefer to use sour cream than like doing just kind of like milk, because I think it's got like, I love the tanginess of sour cream and it's obviously got less liquid than milk. Just kind of pushing down to get the air out. That's not gonna fit. There we go. Okay, so we got our sour cream going in, nice and tangy, but it's also light. Sour cream gives a good tang without it being really dense, the way that like cream cheese would. I know a lot of people that swear by cream cheese in their mashed potatoes. I have had cream cheese mashed potatoes. They're delicious. I just prefer a lighter mashed potato. There's nothing wrong with that. Make what you want, however you want. Metal measuring cups are way better than plastic ones. They're stamped and they are going to have a better consistency than plastic will. So that's why I stick to metal ones. Okay, and then the last thing I need is 2 tablespoons, or about 1 ounce, 30 mils of milk. I don't even know, what do I have in here? This is 4, so once we get to 3. Almost. Okay, cool. Okay, and now again, I'm just gonna start gently folding my mashed potatoes. We're just being super, super gentle with them. I don't want to beat any of the air out of them. I don't want them to become dense. So I'm just going super easy through here. I am going to turn this off now. And then I also am going to add some salt, some more salt, and also some black pepper. Okay, let's do that. I don't want to incorporate it all the way because then I have to remix everything once I go into the black pepper and the salt. I'm doing a teaspoon or about 2.5 grams of the Diamond Crystal kosher salt. And then about 1/4 teaspoon or 1/2 gram of the cracked black pepper. This is honestly I'm just going to do this to taste. I'm not going to measure this. A little bit more. Okay. There we go. And now we're just going to mix until it's fully incorporated, and then the potatoes are done. Easy peasy. This is definitely one of those recipes that the pictures look like the result. Definitely. Okay, I'm going to give it a taste. We're going to see how we feel about it. And then we should be done. Actually, I got a fork back here. Let's do this. Perfect. That's so good. Okay. Mashed potatoes. I guess, is there anything that I want to add? Storing potatoes, cooking potatoes ahead of time. Any of that kind of stuff. So it's really important, specifically for potatoes, baked potatoes, mashed potatoes, any of that kind of stuff. If you're, a little bit of a side note, if you're ever at a buffet and you see the mashed potatoes that are surrounded in aluminum foil and sitting in a water basket, please don't eat those. Because of the environment created with mashed potatoes or a baked potato or something like that, which is specifically a low oxygen, low acid environment. If your potato or mashed potatoes or whatever potato product, or honestly anything that's kind of the same nature, mashed squash, any of that kind of stuff, there's a danger zone. There's a danger zone that we've probably all heard about when it comes to temperature, which is going to be in between 40 degrees at the bottom and 140 degrees at the top. That's 4 degrees Celsius to 60 degrees Celsius. That zone is the zone in which bacteria loves to thrive, right? Anything over that, and it's going to start killing it off. Anything under that, and it's going to stop it from growing, right? And so what happens is if a potato is sitting out in that same environment, right, in that danger zone for longer than an hour, there is a chance. Now, I'm not saying I'm sure that everybody has had a situation where potatoes were sitting out for several hours on a counter doing their thing during Thanksgiving and nobody's gotten sick. And that is cool and well. I'm just saying please be safe, please be conservative with your food and the temperatures that you keep it at, just liability purposes and making sure that we're all being safe. Botulism is a thing that can grow in that environment. And so you have to be kind of careful. I don't know what the Celsius is for that. I think it's 250 degrees for 20 minutes to kill botulism. Yes, it is 250 degrees for at least 20 minutes. That's 121 degrees Celsius. By the time you've cooked your potatoes enough to make sure that it's killed, your potatoes are overheated, overcooked, and gross. And so just be safe. Once you've cooked them, please don't let them sit out for longer than an hour. Just kind of like hanging out warm. Put them in a container. If you're not planning on eating them, put them in a container and put them in your refrigerator and have them put away so that they are cooling off immediately. Or serve them within an hour of making, or I'd say honestly serve them within about 30 minutes of making them. So the most time like leeway or whatever I would give for making your potatoes on like a holiday is depending on like how much you're making. So if you're making this amount, I'd probably say like no more than 2 hours before you're going to sit down at your table. If you're making a much larger amount and it takes longer for you to boil a huge stock pot worth of potatoes, or you're doing whole potatoes and so it's going to take you an hour and a half to cook through a potato or something like that, obviously you can push that back a little bit, but just be careful with your timing on potatoes. You are adding sour cream in. It's quite a bit of sour cream. It does make it a little bit more of an acidic environment. So there's probably a little more play in the joints, but just be safe. Please just be safe when it comes to food and temperatures. Yeah. If you are trying to make trying to reheat your potatoes, right? So like you've got leftover potatoes. In what world that happens, I don't know, but say you have some leftover potatoes, mashed potatoes, reheat them slowly. I wouldn't recommend reheating them in the microwave. If that's really your only option, I would say to put a pat of butter on top of it and reheat it at like a defrost level. So you're going to reheat it at a super, super low. Or like if you have a microwave that has something like a melt chocolate or softened cream cheese or something like that, use those things that are like a much lower power level in your microwave because microwaves agitate and heat the water molecules in the food that you're heating. And potatoes in particular, it's like not a great thing to do in a microwave. And the same thing with milk. It can split milk. And so you have to kind of really gently reheat that. And I would say like do it in like 15-second increments. And I know that's going to take a long time, but you will have a better textured mashed potato result if you're reheating them. I personally just toss them on a stovetop in a pot and kind of gently reheat that. And I'll add in more butter and maybe add in a little bit more. As it takes moisture out, I might add in a little more milk or a little bit more sour cream. But by and large, like adding a little bit of butter and getting those emulsifiers kind of going back in is going to do wonders for the texture when you're reheating it. So yeah, reheat it on low, make sure you're adding butter. And then if you need to add a little bit more moisture, you can add some milk or you can add in some sour cream. Does anybody have any questions? You can eat cold mashed potatoes out of the refrigerator if that is what you want to do. Refrigerators are typically just over freezing, which is not in the danger zone. So you're okay. A potato's never been in the same room long enough with me for botulism. And that's what I'm saying. Like if you're gonna just like, make it and go right into eating it, you don't have a problem. I'm just trying to make sure that we're all safe. For larger batches, do you increase all ingredients equally, or is there a better individual ingredient adjustment? I think the only thing that you're probably going to have to increase is maybe the salt. But yeah, I would tell you to just increase everything equally across the board. Just double, quadruple, whatever this recipe, and you will still end up with a very good mashed potato. I don't anticipate, there's not a huge difference between potatoes. If you have the proper weight, you're not going to have like potatoes don't change the way that fruit changes, right? So like, say I'm saying make a strawberry syrup or make a whatever, salad. Sometimes, especially when it comes to syrups, like strawberries, if they're out of season, or fruit when they're out of season, don't have as much sugar in them and they are not usually as ripe, right? So you have to kind of adjust by adding more sugar to make that work. That's not really the case with potatoes. Potatoes are just kind of potatoes. So there's not a lot of adjustment that you need to make. You may only need to adjust the salt. And even then, like, I don't know. I've done this where I have quadrupled this recipe and used the same stuff, and I haven't had to adjust anything. So I don't anticipate that. But if you do prefer things saltier, or you like to have even more pepper, or maybe you want to throw some nutmeg over the top of this, like, by all means, have at it and adjust to your tastes. But you should be able to just like X times whatever you want that recipe to be, or this recipe to be, and you'd be fine. You pepper your potatoes until you feel your nose tingling, and then get ready for a sneeze. Hey, sure. I always feel like, because I like I don't grind right into the potatoes. I'll like grind into the lid and then toss in the lid, and it's just such a big poof of like pepper that I'm like, oh my God, every time I do it. But it's easier to measure that way than doing it just by like sight. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today while we made our mashed potatoes. I hope that if you do stumble upon this video and make these potatoes, that you and your family have a lovely time with them. If, again, like I said, if you have any questions that I did not answer today, or you want to make a comment of some kind, go ahead and just place that underneath the YouTube video, and I will take a look at it when I get notified and write you back, answer your questions, respond to whatever comments you have, and do the best that I can to get back to you as soon as possible. You can also find this recipe on my website at alittlespoon.com, and it is under, I think, Homestyle Mashed Potatoes is the specific title to this recipe. There is also a recipe that is linked, I believe, in the notes section. I do have a recipe for a dry brined reverse seared prime rib. That, like, once you get through that recipe, there's like a secondary recipe underneath it for au jus. So it shows you how to make like a really nice au jus, or like beef stock that's kind of got some like butter emulsified into it. And then it's also got in the notes section for that specific part of the recipe on how to make gravy. So if you are interested in going from mashed potatoes and then like also having a gravy, whether that be a turkey gravy or a chicken gravy or a roast, like a beef gravy or something like that, that can also be made by following the instructions for those. And hopefully that's like an even better, right? So now you got your gravy and your mashed potatoes. If you want to comment, or you like the recipe once you've made it, any kind of rating or comment on a recipe on our websites do great things for us with SEO. So if there's not an option for you to monetarily support, just any amount of commentary following me on Instagram at a_little_spoon. Spaces aren't allowed, and a little spoon was taken, so I have got some underscores in between each word. You can find me on Instagram, follow me there. I'm posting recipes and pictures and stuff all the time. I do have a Patreon, last but not least, I promise. I do have a Patreon, so for as little as, I think they made me make tiers, so you can't like just decide how much you're gonna do a month. And I think I've got like $1 a month, $5 a month, and then like 10 and 20 or something like that. But if I really, really don't want to have ads on my website, I'm trying as best I can to stay away from getting revenue that way, because I think it just clutters up a website and makes it really hard for people to navigate and just like have a relaxing time reading through stuff. And so a lot of my revenue actually comes from my Patreon. So if you want to support and just lurk and want nothing, just like say, hey, I want to throw money at this because I really like this content creator and I want to support their work they're doing, like that is an absolute easy way for you to do that. But just know that if you do join my Patreon, even at the dollar amount, I do also have a private Discord server. We hang out, we talk about food, we do monthly chats, again, where we hang out and talk about food. And it's just a good time. I will also add a lot of behind the scenes stuff. I ask a lot of questions about what kind of content people want to see. And it's usually I'm asking my Patreon people instead of the larger population. So you kind of get a little insight and a little like behind the scenes for what's going on and what I'm cooking up, for lack of better terminology. So Thank you very much for joining me today. I will see you guys at the next cook along, and I hope to share some more wonderful recipes with you. Bye. Okay, and now that we have done that, Live is still gonna keep going for just a little bit. I'm sure he wants to come in and eat some of these potatoes. Yeah. Eating time, yeah. Thanks, guys. Yeah, so that was just the end. I don't know, for anybody who's never been to one of these, that was just kind of the end cut for the playlist on YouTube. And then we kind of chill and put things away for a little bit and chat a little bit. Can I use beef tallow instead of butter? No. For the mashed potatoes specifically, right? Not for the gravy? Do you mean for the gravy or do you mean for the mashed potatoes, Siva? For the potatoes, no. You can maybe use a little bit, but I wouldn't recommend it just because it doesn't have, it's all fat, right? It's pure fat. So the kind of cool thing about butter, right, is I mentioned like emulsification, right? So it kind of pulls together your fat and your waters, and it combines them so that they can create kind of like, it's not unbreakable because depending on how hot it gets, it's like a problem. But it creates kind of that like it pulls them together and creates like a bond. We'll call it a bond, whatever. It creates that bond and allows them to play together instead of being separate. So if you're just going to be adding fat in, you're not going to get that emulsification, and it's not going to be as creamy as it could be. Will it add extra flavor? Yes. Could you maybe do like 20% tallow and 80% butter? Yes. And still get some of those emulsification properties? Yes. Is it going to be as creamy? Also probably not, but you could probably play with that. I just wouldn't take out butter entirely. It is an important ingredient to get that into those molecules so that the milk and the sour cream really stick to them. Without that butter, you're just not gonna get as creamy of a product. Salted or unsalted don't truly matter. I do prefer unsalted so that I can salt to what I want instead of and actually follow a recipe. I feel like if I use unsalted butter, that I can follow a recipe to the T and then finish to taste. If I use salted butter and the person who wrote the recipe didn't use salted butter, and then I add the same amount of butter or the same amount of salt that they told me to, not only do I have salted butter, I also now have the salt that was added, and now I've oversalted. And so I actually I prefer using recipes that have unsalted butter and salt with the idea that they started with unsalted butter so that you don't oversalt anything. But European style butter in general is going to be better than an American style butter because American style butters have more water in them. And so this whole time we let the potatoes steam a little bit here, and then we let the potatoes steam a little bit here, trying to get all that water out, and then you're gonna add water back in with the butter. Just more fat is, the more fat in your butter you have, the better compared to water. Who else is now making potatoes for dinner? You could have made them with me right now or an hour or two ago. Yeah, I kind of want to. Make a little divot. Yeah, I used unsalted Kerrygold butter, but you can use whatever. I'm actually gonna use a spoon. You had to get sour cream. I was underprepared. Oh no! Oh no! some mashed potatoes and gravy here, since we made gravy. Oh man. Freeze dry with hot water, add butter, and done. I see you. One time, I promise it wasn't me. It was my boyfriend at the time. We were making like bagged mashed potatoes. Like the, what like flake, whatever. What are they called? Why am I having an issue here? The like fake mashed potatoes. And instant, thank you. That was the word I was looking for. We made instant mashed potatoes and it said to use a teaspoon of salt and he did a tablespoon of salt. Those were so salty. Oh my God. That was so rough. Hi there. Are you looking for gravy?
More than gravy.
No.
What?
No, you cannot do that. Here.
What do we,
We do ragu. You want ragu over potatoes for dinner?
oh yeah.
That's a happy man.
A little pocket.
Yeah, I could also do steak. I think I have some steaks cut up. Maybe. To think about that.
The official
Or
taste
salmon.
tester.
You could do salmon.
These are officially approved.
Yeah, he's tall, I'm short. Say lovey. I said chicken tenders, but I'm biased.
Salmon.
Yeah, I've got salmon in the fridge for us if you want to do salmon. Cool.
I don't know. Most other places to figure out if they're good. Rose not breathing in between bites. Eating does not require breathing. So, yeah. Water.
I have here.
Is that a Harry special Owala blue bottle?
Why would it
Sponsored
be
by O.
not sponsored by Owala? Also would be really cool. Definitely not sponsored by Owala. Okay.
Time to do a bunch of chores.
Yep,
That we put off yesterday because we went hiking with the kids in Boulder
we did. That was fun.
and never got to the end of the hike because they both had to go pee at completely separate times.
Yeah.
They're like halfway through the hike, Daddy, I have to pee. All right, go in the woods. No.
He
All
was
right, let's go
scared.
back.
He wouldn't do it.
Came back. It was like, I gotta poop. I'm like, okay, I guess we're not gonna
Think
do
out
this.
loud. That poor kid's getting so embarrassed
Yeah,
right now.
Harry.
Oh my God.
White hairs and leopard beard or potato flake. Porque no loss, those.
Poop in the woods. We've all done it.
There's a bear poop in the woods. So yeah, laundry. Skip lunch or this our lunch?
No, I'll probably make something for lunch.
Fresh.
That's a good point. Do you want me to just do salmon now? What time is it?
Well, it-
Okay. Yeah. If you want, we could do that, and then I could maybe just do something really simple. Do like mac and cheese, and then we could make a board for the turkey we would make for dinner time later. That sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Charcuterie uses alcohol. I don't want to think alcohol today.
No, we don't have to. We can do grapefruit and tonic if you want.
Mocktail.
Mocktail.
All right, well, so we'll shut it down. So we can get busy.
Yeah.
Ryan, the cold brush. Get off the irrigation.
Okay.
Take the time.
I thought we needed to blow that out. What whatever. It's blowing out the sprinklers.
Get all the water out of the lawn.
How do we do that?
Ask him. I don't know.
Awesome.
Yo, what up, Clark?
Thank God we know a neighbor. We'd be in so much trouble.
Clarkin. Cheers.
We were mashing. We've been mashing. We mashed already. We got mashed potatoes and gravy.
With our green salmon potatoes.
With our green? I've got asparagus in the refrigerator and Brussels sprouts. Either of those would work.
Asparagus.
Luke's gonna want edamame.
Late to the mash.
You are. That's okay. You can rewatch the video on YouTube.
Remaster last night.
Oh man.
All right, we're gonna shut it down.
Okay. True. Ah. Yeah, don't forget. I guess yeah. Thank you, Grandma Slayer, for I don't even know. Selling more than I sell myself. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. Don't forget to like the recipe online. That's even better. Most of my traffic comes from web searches, and the higher your like stars and comments and all that kind of stuff are on your recipes, the more Google puts you higher up on the page. So the absolute best impact you can have without any amount of monetary burden is to like 5-star or like 4-star, whatever you would. I mean, honestly, if you thought the recipe was worth 4 stars and not 5 stars, do a 4-star. Do what follow your heart on that one. No leopard. Give it a ranking. Maybe make a comment. At a minimum, a ranking does wonders for recipes online. So 3 stars, Cabo. Do what you want. I honestly just make sure that if you're going to go under 5 stars, you at least make it first. That's all I'm saying. At least make the recipe before you decide what you're gonna rate it. Nah, JK. Nah. Okay, friends. I'll see you guys next time. I'll probably see you during the week, during Lep's streams.